So thank you for joining us today. My name's Emily Kyle. We're just thrilled to have Karen here today. Karen and I have known each other for, I'm going to say, more than 15 years.
It's been a bit.
Yeah, definitely. We serve on some committees together for some nonprofits in the community. And to be clear, we're not affiliated with each other. I don't get any money from any work that Karen does. She doesn't get any from mine. We don't have no financial arrangement. I just think that she knows what she's doing and she's a good person and easy to work with. And so we enjoy working with her and kind of send referrals back and forth as is appropriate with whatever choice the client would like to make. We do have on here the Q&A and the chat. So if you have questions, please type them in one or the other, and I'll keep my eye on what's happening. So if there are questions that seem relevant, I can interrupt Karen. And with that, Karen, I'll let you do whatever additional introduction you'd like to do and get started. So thanks for taking out some time of your day today.
Thank you, Emily. I greatly appreciate the opportunity. Welcome to all of those that are attending this afternoon. Appreciate your time. My name is Karen Starbowski. Like Emily said, I work with MassMutual, and I am what you call a special care planner, which means I'm a financial planner who helps parents who have kids with special needs create life care plans so that there's assets and resources available to their child when the parents are no longer here. Today, Emily has asked me to talk about some financial mistakes that parents make as while they're going through the process or not going through the process for their child. So as Emily said, if you have questions along the way, put them in the chat and we'll get moving. Emily already gave my part of my disclosure. We are not affiliated in any way. I am also not a CPA or an attorney, so I cannot give tax or legal advice. And I do hold a securities license. So we don't hear this one as much anymore, but this used to be a common mistake that parents would make, disinheriting their loved one with special needs. So I'm not sure when we do things via Zoom, I don't know how old your kiddos are, but as your child reaches the age of 18 and starts applying for benefits on their own, they can only have $2,000 to their name. So parents would think, well, I can't leave any of my assets to my child when I pass away, so I'm just going to disinherit them completely. Well, the problem with that is, your government benefits provide bare bones care. And we want, if there are assets available, we want your child to be able to use them and to have greater care as they grow old and age. So I don't want to roll into the next slide. So just the nuts and bolts of this slide is you don't need to disinherit someone with special needs. That's what Emily and I do, is help you figure out ways to plan for your child properly so they won't be disinherited. This one kind of happens accidentally. So your child is, 18 or 20, and you realize there's an account in their name you forgot about, and that takes them over that age, that $2,000 limit. It could be an UTMA or an UGMA account. It could be savings bonds that grandma left them. So we just want to make sure that when we do our planning, we're doing a deep dive. There isn't a savings account sitting somewhere in your child's name that would disqualify them from their government benefits. Now, this one, Emily and I still do here. So you run into a family that has more than one child with special needs, and they'll say, well, I've got my plan in place. I'm going to leave all my assets to my daughter who does not have special needs. And she's going to, take care of my son with special needs. while that all sounds good in theory, inevitably that a lot of issues could arise from that. You know, your daughter, maybe your daughter's young, maybe she's, 20 something and she's lovely, but we don't know, who she's going to meet up with in the future. She could get in a car accident and get sued, and then all those assets could disappear. She might be financially, um, have challenges and when she's doing her finances and may blow through it all. She may get married and to get divorced, and there goes half of the assets that you left to your son with special needs. And, she may say one day, I'm tired of this. And I'm just going to take the money and run, and somebody else can take care of my brother with special needs. So this is not the ideal planning situation. There's too many what ifs. We don't know if the money would actually get used for your child with special needs. So this is not the ideal situation. And I think Emily still runs into this on occasion when we talk to parents. Well, you know what they say about assuming, and I won't say that on a video, on a taped recording, but we don't want to assume anything. You may have in the back of your mind that one of your other children will take care of your child with special needs, or another family member or a really good friend, but you really want you want to ask them one, you don't want to assume. You want to make sure they understand the what needs to be done on a day-to-day basis for your child, depending on their age, depending on their needs. You want them to be involved in the future, because in part of the planning from the caregiving standpoint, basically you don't want them to be surprised. One of the instances is, you assume that one of your children will be the caretaker of your child with special needs. Well, what if they're not married yet? Will their future spouse, uh, is this something that they want to do? It's not, as you know, as a parent of somebody with special needs, day to day, it's not an easy thing. There are challenges. There's also, the filing and regulations that need to be done to care for their government benefits. So you want to make sure that the person that you want to be the caregiver has a big picture of everything that's included in becoming the caregiver for your child. You don't want to have any surprises when you're not here anymore. Well, in detail, this is really Emily's platform. It's a trust work, trust, special needs trust. But we're going to go through just a little bit of this. But not having the right special needs trust can be a problem for your child. So we always call pre-planning the right planning. And pre-planning is having a third-party special needs trust in place. That way you can choose the beneficiary for your child. It's a less restrictive trust. It's ideally the way to go. You can put in different wishes that you want in the future, make sure that your child gets to do different activities every year, however the trust will be paid out. A first party special needs trust is when your child has money themselves, whether they inherit directly from maybe a grandparent or an aunt or uncle, or they win a settlement case. Not it still helps them protect their government benefits, but it's a little bit more restrictive of a special needs trust. So, if we don't want to, and that's also where your assets would go if you accidentally, put that in quotes, leave money to your child who's on government benefits, then Emily's going to real quickly put those benefits into a first party special needs trust. We ideally want to pre-plan a third-party special needs trust that protects your child's government benefits while giving them more, what do I want to say? more benefits. I don't want to use the word benefits, giving them more than their benefits can provide, helping create a more well-rounded life.
Yeah, and on that point, Karen, if I may, I think one of
Yes.
the things that sometimes happens is, and we bring this up when we're doing estate planning for parents who have special needs children, is to make sure that the people you're going to inherit from as the parent, that that plan also directs the money to a special needs trust. So, for example, if your mom's trust, the grandparent of the special needs child, says it's going to go equally to my kids, but if a kid is deceased, it goes per stirpes or to their descendants. Well, what if you predeceased your special needs kid and then mom passes away and now they've received that distribution directly? As Karen said, that's going to have to go into a first party trust, which is the kind that has the payback to the state who provided Medicaid services. So I know it's uncomfortable to talk to people about, oh, you're going to leave me money. Hey, by the way, can you do it in a way that doesn't mess up my kids' benefits? But I think it really is important because we do unfortunately see where the child, the parent of the disabled child, does predecease their parent, and now we have a different problem. So you got to think more than just about your own plan, but where you might get money from as well.
Well, and Emily brought up that, it could be an uncomfortable conversation with the family member, but that brings up another point is we encourage having a family meeting. And it's not to tell your family how much money you have. It's to explain to your family what your plans are for your child's future. And in that conversation, you could, say, we want so-and-so, our wishes are to have so-and-so be the caregiver, so-and-so to be the trustee, and to all of your family members, we're not asking you to leave money to our child, like Emily said, but if you do, we would need to make sure it's done properly so that they don't become ineligible for their benefits. So very important. So this gets a little bit confusing, but not funding a special needs trust. It means two things, or it comes at two different times. So you work with Emily, you iron out all the legal details, and she sends you home with a beautiful binder. It's great, but if your trust is not funded, it's not going to do your child any good. Now, when that funding happens is determined by you, and there's no wrong answer, but it needs to be done. Let me just keep going and then we'll make sure I get it straight. You can fund immediately with assets if you so choose, but most families don't have the wherewithal to start saving into a special needs trust and get the dollars that they need for their child's future. But the important part near term, when we talk about funding, is to update your beneficiary information and make sure that the assets that you do have are directed into that special needs trust. So for instance, you may have your 401k, you may have a brokerage account, and you want those accounts to go to your child with special needs when you pass. So Emily creates your legal documents, you name your special needs trust, so then you know which accounts the beneficiaries should be changed for, so that if something should happen to you near term, those assets would then flow into your special needs trust and therefore funding it. So funding can be actual assets, or it could be paperwork that directs the funds into the trust. And then long term, you live to be 102, you pass away, those beneficiaries, those life insurance policies, 401ks, your home will be directed into the special needs trust. So there's near-term funding and when you pass away funding. But if you don't do it, then you just create a whole nother problem. You've done great legal work with Emily, but if you don't direct your assets, the legal paperwork was for naught. So when you're choosing your attorney, please interview them. Now, Emily, you may interview Emily just to see if your personalities jive and you like her way of business, but she knows what she's doing. She's worked in the special needs community for many, many years. If you choose not to go with Emily, then you want to interview your attorney to make sure they know what a special needs trust is, that they've done more than one in the last 5 years, because an attorney legally can write up your estate planning docs and include special needs trusts in that document. Doesn't mean they know how. As parents and guardians, I'm sure you are aware that the special needs world is complex. The rules are crazy. The laws change all the time. So you want to make sure that you choose an attorney that knows the special needs community and the laws that go with it. I always say, like for my disclosure, I am not an attorney, nor do I play one on TV. But if I read a document and find problems, you have a problem. Because if I catch it, there's a problem.
Yeah, and I would say that myself and other folks who do special needs planning, if you really like your estate planning attorney, that's terrific, and you can use that person. Sometimes we get hired just to do the special needs piece. So your attorney does all the foundation documents, your trust, your powers of attorney, your will, and then they just bring us in to do the special needs planning. So, you want to be with the right person who can do the bits, but it doesn't mean you have to completely leave somebody that you're comfortable with and is doing a great job otherwise.
Good point. So this is a whole presentation on its own, but some parents and guardians are not considering an ABLE account. So during this presentation, I keep saying that your child, once they turn 18, cannot have more than $2,000 in their name, or they'll be ineligible for government benefits. Well, this is a way where they can be eligible, they can save money and still be eligible for government benefits. ABLE accounts were set up, I can't believe it's been 10 years, but they were set up 10 years ago to allow your child to save money. And what we would say in the beginning is, they were set up to avoid the stupid spend down rule. So if your child is able to work, and they get their their SSI, and they also get a check, and then at the end of the month they'd have $2,045 in the bank account. So you'd have to do a stupid spend down for that $45. You don't have to do that anymore. You can open an ABLE account. It allows your child to save up to $18,000 a year. They can only have one. Other people can save to it. And it's a great tool. It's not the end all for planning for your child, but it's a great tool that works well with a special needs trust for your child's future. It's also a good way if your child has the ability to learn financial, what do I want to call it? You want to teach your child how to use money. It's a great way too, because many of these accounts do have a debit card. So you can, teach them how to, go to the grocery store, buy their groceries, how to pay for them. Most of the states in the country have one. This website on the slide, ablenrc.org, is a great resource. It allows you to compare the different accounts across the country and see what's the best fit for your family. But it's a great tool, and so many parents are missing out on this tool by not opening one for their child. Your child has to have been disabled before the age of 26 and opened by then. But that is changing in the next few years too. But it is a great tool.
Yeah, if I have just two little comments on ABLE accounts.
Go ahead.
So for parents, just remember that what's left in the account when your kiddo passes away goes back to the state Medicaid program. So if you're saving for your kid, a special needs trust is probably a better option. But if your kid has money that's going to put them over the $2,000 limit, as Karen said, then this is a great place to offload those funds. And the other thing that's come up a lot is many of the other states don't have that Medicaid payback within their ABLE Act provisions, but Arizona does. So it doesn't really matter where you open the ABLE account.
Right.
Arizona still will require what's left in that account after some administrative expenses and funeral costs are paid back to the state. So when you're looking at that website that Karen put up on the screen, and you see that there are places that don't have the payback requirement, in Arizona, at least right now, we still do, regardless of where the ABLE account's opened.
Right. And that's why too, I say this is not, your end all for your estate planning. To maintain your eligibility for your benefits, your child's benefits, you can only have $100,000 in there. But it's a good tool, working tool for your child to manage finances. And it's also a good tool for when you pass away, for the caregiver, because the trust could deposit money into this account to be used to pay for things. So it's something to keep in mind for in the future. So we talked about this one a little bit, but failure to communicate. So don't assume your family members want to take the responsibility of caring for your child or want to take the responsibility of managing a special needs trust. Don't forget to communicate your wishes. Like, when you're not here, where would you prefer that your child lives? Have you reviewed places, those options where your child would live next if it's not with a family member? So you want to make sure there's communication in place. We always recommend, reviewing your plans annually from a financial standpoint, and probably every 3 to 5 years from a legal standpoint. Because people change, laws change, and you want to make sure that the people that you have in your plan that you've communicated to are still a part of your life. So, keep this in mind as you're making your plans. Communicate to your family members and your friends that you want to be included in the plan. So this kind of slide kind of coincides with when you should, fund your special needs trust. Updating your beneficiaries, so important, especially on a life insurance policy, in an annuity, in a 401k. Those beneficiaries are contractual. So if you, in your mind, you think you want them to go one direction, but contractually you filled out that beneficiary form to say something else, that something else is going to happen. So you want to be very, very careful. This is, both Emily and I, when we're doing plans with people, this is an important step to make sure all your beneficiaries are updated after your legal documents are created. Unfortunately, I know of two circumstances, I can't think of pronounce the right word, where beneficiaries on a life insurance policy and a 401k were not what the family thought was going to be. And they have unpleasant surprises. And the last thing you want to do is have people be mad at you when you're dead. I mean, and that has happened because, there's, people get divorced and remarried. People pass away, and then maybe the designation was to their next of kin, their child. So you really, really want to make sure your beneficiaries are updated and go the direction that you want them to go. Are they going to another child? Are they going to the child with special needs into their trust? You want to make sure, and this might change over time, because when if you're a young family and you're starting your financial plan, you may divide your assets one way, and then 10, 15, 20 years down the line, you may have accumulated a bunch of different assets. So you may need to rearrange based on laws and type of assets that you've accumulated over time. So always an important step. Yep, that's it on that slide. Sorry, I want to make sure I wasn't missing anything. Oops. So not doing anything is a plan. Not particularly a plan that we want to do. because that means that the state will make the plan for you. If your child's under the age of 18, there could be conservative put in place. If your child's over the age of 18, then you're going to be in that predicament of the assets will go into a first party special needs trust with different rules and regulations and a Medicaid payback for the trust when your child passes away. So not creating a will and a trust is a plan, but it's not a great plan, especially if you have a child with special needs, because again, we're trying to protect those government benefits. We're trying to protect their eligibility. Continuing on the not planning at all, a list of things here to keep in mind that we need to plan for. And when Emily and I, when we create estate planning docs and life care plans for parents and guardians, these are all things that are included. We talk about titling the beneficiaries, again, making sure the assets flow the direction you want them to flow, creating that special needs trust. Are there successors in your documents? Have you even thought of that? So typically, in a family, if it's two-parent household or two guardian household, if one person passes, then the other one is the successor caregiver. But what happens if something happens to both of you? We want to make sure there's a plan in place for caregivers, for guardians, for trustees. And keep in mind too, parents, we get that look of panic. Well, we don't know who's going to take care of my kid 30 years from now. Well, we don't either. 30 years from now is a long time. People come and go out of your lives. So try and think in the near term. If something happened tomorrow or within the next 5-ish years, who would you want to be the caregiver? Who would you want to be the guardian? Who would you want to be the trustee of the assets of the trust? So think in small chunks. Don't panic and think, I don't know who's going to take care of my child way far down the road. Work with your attorney or Emily to get all your estate planning docs done. And we also like parents to do a letter of intent. A letter of intent is excuse me, is a document that captures all your wishes and desires for your child, all the details. So you as a parent or guardian knows your child from day to day. You don't even have to think about it. Their likes, their dislikes, what's going to trigger them, their allergies, who to call for this and that and the next thing. But if something happens to you, somebody else has to figure all that out. So a letter of intent captures all of that so that somebody doesn't have to start from scratch. And just like anything else, we have parents review it annually because things change. So just a list of things to think about as you're getting your plans together.
And I think one of the things people are always concerned about is how do I even start the letter of intent? And I think one of the things Karen and I have talked about is one thing that you might want to do is just keep a journal for the next 2 weeks of, the doctor appointment, what you did, what happened, what maybe was a trigger for your child. And if you keep that journal for a couple of weeks, I think that that's going to give you a really good idea of the information that you need to impart upon somebody who's not there. And as Karen said, your 5-year-old is probably going to be different than when that child is 25 years old. And so again, keep a journal for a couple of weeks and then you can update your letter of intent. So really helpful for the next people who are taking over.
Well, I've even seen them include, if I'm not here, where I wish my child to live. So that gives people an idea of places to look at. I've also seen where it says, I want my child to be able to do this, this, and this, he likes to do this, this, and this, be that specific. Also keep in mind, it's lovely to do it in Word because it's easy to make updates, but print it out. It's not going to do anybody any good if they can't find it. So print it out, maybe give it to the person that's going to be the successor guardian so that they have it, or the trustee, or with your legal documents. So super important document. So how do you start? You start by calling Emily or myself to get started. We look from a financial standpoint, we look at your financial household and making sure that your goals and needs are met, and then work on your child's goals and needs. So it's a big picture thing. Every plan is different because every family is different. Every child is different. So and I know parents don't want to get started. It's a hard topic. Both Emily and I, it's hard. We do make our clients cry. And it's not because we're being mean. It's because we're making them think about things that they don't want to think about. But they're important things. It's really important to get started. The sooner the better. I get that all the time too, is when? Yesterday. The younger you are when you get started, the more that you're able to do, the more variety you're able to put in your plan. The older you get, the harder it is to save, the harder it could be to get different products and plans in place for your child. So getting started, and even if we know we want to start here, to get to here, and you may not have the wherewithal and the assets to get to here now, at least we know where we want to go. And every year we can peel a little bit away and get to that point. And that's all I have. I want to thank everybody for taking their time and thank Emily for including me in her series. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so I have a question for you that I'm not sure I've ever asked. So what is a CLU and a CHSNC? What are those letters after your name? What do those mean?
So a CLU is a Chartered Life Underwriter designation. So that means I have a certification in life insurance. And then CHSNC is a Chartered Special Needs Consultant. So that's my special needs designation.
Wonderful. Well, I
Yep.
don't see any questions in our chat or our Q&A. I really appreciate
Wow.
I really appreciate the information. I think it was thorough and gives people something to think about and strive for. And again, I really appreciate your time. It's always a pleasure to work with you. So thank you so much, Karen.
Thanks, Emily. Take care.
All right, you too. Thank you all for attending.